House Standing Committee on Appropriations and Revenue, meeting number 2 agenda, Thursday, January the 20th, 2022, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We're in Annex Room 169. If we can close the doors to the outside, please, just for noise purposes. Anybody in the room, everybody in the room, make sure that you have your cell phones and other electronic devices set so that it doesn't make noise. As Chairman Massey has said multiple times, if you can put it on airplane mode, it's probably better, so it doesn't interfere with our sensitive equipment, so everybody out in the real world and here can hear and see and get a good recording of what is going on. If you'll call the roll, please.
Representative Beckler. Here in the room. Representative Bentley. Representative Blanton. Representative Bridges. Here in the room. Representative Dossett.
Here in the room.
Representative Fisher.
Here in the room.
Representative Fleming.
Here in the room.
Representative Flood.
Present in the annex.
Thank you. Representative Fugate.
Here in the room.
Representative Gentry. Representative Hale.
Here in the room.
Representative Hart. Representative Hatton.
Here in the room.
Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Nemes.
Here in the room.
Representative Palumbo.
Here in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Prunty. Representative Raymond.
I'm here in the room.
Representative Riley.
Here in the room.
Representative Santoro.
Here in the room.
Representative Tipton.
Present in the room.
Representative Wilner.
Here in the room.
Representative Reed.
Here in the room.
Chairman Petrie.
President in the room. We have a quorum and one other small order of business. If you're attending the meeting remotely, please indicate through the chat feature so that the staff members can determine whether or not you have a question or need to make a comment. That'll be the best way for us to monitor that. You make that indication, we'll put you in the queue and get to you as fast as we can. Give a little preview for today so everybody knows. On the agenda, we have House Bill 1, House Bill 226, and House Bill 241 appearing in that order. House Bill 226 will not be considered today. Do not take that as anything against the bill or the sponsor. He and I continue to talk about this. There's, I think, at least one more tweak, modification to be made to that bill. I would anticipate that it's still going to have traction to move forward. It just will not do so today. Secondly, we're going to take out of order, and rather than House Bill 1, we're going to take up House Bill 241, the transportation budget first. And with that said, we have Representative Reed at the table, and we have Representative Santoro at the table. And Representative Reed, Representative Santoro, will you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Representative Brandon Reed, representing the 24th House District.
Representative Sal Santoro, District 60.
And will you each raise your right hands? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And Vice Chairman Reed, will you administer the same oath back to me, please?
Chairman Petrie, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm going to make just a quick opening remark regarding House Bill 241 before we get into the presentation of it. I just want to simply point out that House Bill 241, the transportation budget, works in conjunction with House Bill 1 in ways that have not been done before between the executive branch budgets and the transportation budget. And what I mean by that is this: there have been extra measures taken to utilize general funds in selective surgical ways, hopefully smart ways, to maximize every bit of the road fund money that comes in through that source, to maximize that for use for true transportation needs rather than other things. We attempted part of this last session. Our hopes are that at the end of this session, we will have accomplished those goals through both chambers and through the entire General Assembly, and we will have maximized those dollar figures. With that said, Representative Reed, Representative Santoro, if you will proceed with House Bill 241.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the committee sub.
We have a committee sub and a motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Committee sub is adopted. We are now considering House Bill 241 as amended by committee substitute number 1. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, today is a historic day for the citizens of Kentucky and the General Assembly. For the first time in the Commonwealth's history, the General Assembly filed its budget bill on the 4th day of this session. Since the filing of House Bill 241 and HB 1, recommendations and input from the administration have been received and adjustments have been made. Now we will hear HB 241 and HB 1 today. They are a culmination of 8 months of tireless work. During the interim, we heard from various agencies, stakeholders, and citizens across the Commonwealth. Regardless of how you vote on HB 241 and HB 1 today, members should take pride in this historic movement to realign the budget process with the General Assembly. This process makes the budget more transparent to the General Assembly and the citizens of Kentucky. Today, we are doing what we were elected to do, the people's work. And the budget bills are the most important bills we will pass this legislation. That's why we designated this year's priority bill, House Bill 1, the budget bill. However, Mr. Chairman, this would not have been possible without the many dedicated people who worked on this historic budget. At this time, I would like to thank the LRC staff, the budget staff, specifically Jenny Bannister. She put more hours into this process than she would ever admit and did it selflessly. Jenny and her team, that's behind me here in the meeting room today, are examples of the many hardworking and dedicated people we have in this agency. Next, I would like to thank our legislative assistant, Stacy Jacobs, from scheduling meetings to any request that the chairman and I had. She served the state and her agency well. Also, I'd like to thank our partisan staff, Frank Willey and Jacob Estes, for countless hours of dedication to this historical process. The chairman and I could not have done this without you all. Thank you very much.
And I'm going to stop you at that point. I don't do this a lot. Y'all know I don't. But I'm going to echo exactly what Representative Reed just said. I want to make sure that everybody understands. Jenny Bannister heads up all budget staff. That covers everything. There's so much work, it's unbelievable. I mean, just literally unbelievable, and you would almost say Herculean in the ability to move things and get things and do things and analyze things without exception. Just tremendously good work. Staff, budget staff that's in the room, and I know there may be more, but if you will stand up, please. These people cover all the subject matters, and these people are go-to. They understand, they help inform on history. We need information. They go to the executive branch. They go to whatever source they can come up with, and they help us. And without y'all, this budgets just simply wouldn't be possible, period. So thank you very much. And then with our legislative assistant, Stacy, I know you're listening. All I can say is a simple thank you. She's done above and beyond. With our policy analyst, Frank and Jacob, thank y'all. Just so much work, so much insight. Doesn't matter whether you like the bill or not. The work has been put in. It's been put in good faith, and it's been a tremendous amount of it. Now, anything else, Mr. Representative Reed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and last and not least, I would like to thank you, the gentleman from Todd, for your vision and allowing me to be a part of this process. Chairman Santoro, you may proceed.
Thank you all. House Bill 241 is a transportation operation budget. This budget is the beginning to the end of underfunding our operations budget, and I will now try to explain it to you all. We are taking $200 million from the general fund and $200 million from the restricted fund, so this is a total of $400 million. We're also going to fund $1 billion from the federal funds and $1.6 billion of road fund money. The reason we're doing this is we're going to finally fund our operations of the transportation budget. I work closely with them. Let's talk about some competitive grants at this time. We're going to provide $200 million for a required state match for federal infrastructure packages. There are several of those. They have the RAISE grants, we have infra grants, and mega grants. We're going to fund this stuff so that we don't have to take the money from other areas. Now I want to go to local governments. It includes $50 million in each year, and I want to repeat this, $50 million in each year for special grants to help local governments with road maintenance. That's a total of $100 million. We're going to split this between our counties and our cities. So it's 50% to the counties, 50% to the cities. What county judge or city mayor wouldn't want to have this for maintenance? That's all I hear about is how they're underfunded. Well, we're going to fund it, this General Assembly. I want to talk about general aviation now. General Aviation Airport. I'm not talking about the big three. I'm talking about the 57 general all out through our whole community. $11.4 million each year for a grant pool for available funds for these 57 airports. Some of them don't even have nice runways. We're going to take care of this stuff. $200,000 each year for each of the 57 airports. You know, we hear about economic development. We hear about this and that. Well, we want these CEOs and these people to come in and look at rural areas of Kentucky where we can get them to invest in our state. If we don't have these people flying in and out, because they only come in for a day and they're leaving, they just want to see the great Commonwealth. Now I want to talk about pavement management. We're going to replace we're going to have over $180 million in allocations that was formerly charged out of the road funds with general fund dollars and move this amount to the maintenance account. Excuse me. The maintenance account is what we hear about: potholes, bank slippage, repaving. This is good work for our people, our highway contractors, our citizens. This is so your constituents can get to church, school, work, shopping, wherever they need to go in a safe and a good manner. I just want to say this in closing to everyone. We reignited the transportation budget. We really put the fire to it this time. First time the General Assembly has allocated sizable amount of road fund money from the general fund. I know we're going to take money from Peter to pay Paul, but it has to happen. If we don't have transportation, we don't have anything in this Commonwealth. We crafted an operation budget so the people of Kentucky have funding for maintenance and ability to match federal funds. We're going to match every federal fund dollar we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Reed, anything?
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption of House Bill 241 as amended by the committee sub.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Representative Hatton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question about the airports, the general aviation. I think there's 11 million in there. If I'm reading it correctly, the governor's proposal was for about 50 million for general aviation airports. Is there a reason that we didn't need that much, or somewhere else another plan for getting more money to the airports?
I'm going to jump on that one just for a moment, Representative Hatton, trying to get to it quickly. Excuse me. Back around June or July, we sent a letter out to each of the general aviation airports from me asking what needs were there, what projects were anticipated, so forth and so on. Within about a 2 to 3 month period, I think we had received a correspondence or at least communication back from each of those general aviation airports. 200,000 per year for the next 2 years seems to be an appropriate level for what they're looking at across general aviation. Now, could it be 400? Could it be 4 million? Could it be 400 million? Could it be 4 billion? Everybody wants more money. But at this point, I think the 200,000 per year for these 2 years is a good start to meet what needs they have in queue. Now, I am going to go ahead and go out on the skis a little bit and say, I've met with the Aviation Association multiple times, I think 3 prior commissioners, and multiple aviators in business as well as just flight aviators. One of the things we're going to have to look for is a continuing revenue stream directed to general aviation airports. This is a budget bill, not a revenue bill, so that's not included. But we as a General Assembly should look at that because general aviation airports are uniquely spread fairly evenly throughout the Commonwealth. So if you were to have a disaster or if you were to have specific needs of some sort, whether it be from ice, rain, tornado, or whatever, we have an in and out logistically to a good general aviation airport. So these things have become particularly important, and looking in the future, they're going to be more important and more we could expound on. But right now, given that input back from the general aviations, 200,000 per year seemed appropriate. We'd received no agency request contrary to that, but this is not the end. This is the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's going to be really important for economic development out in the rural areas, as you know. May I ask another question?
Please.
For either of you, what, if anything, specifically is planned for the Mountain Parkway in the transportation budget? And if this is not the appropriate time to ask that, we can deal with that when we talk more specifically. But just curious about whether it gets 4-laned the entire way and what route it will take.
That's going to be in the highway plan. That's not this part. We're just operation budgets. All this is at this time. Good question, though.
Good. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to express my deep appreciation for what I believe of a transportation operating budget, be innovative, really responsive, responsible, and out-of-the-box thinking. And I compliment the chair and the vice chair, as well as the chair of the BNR, Representative Santoro, on doing this. So thank you all very much for your due diligence. The communications was very, very strong and very transparent in order to get things going in a more responsive way in terms of getting our road systems infrastructure back on a stronger founding. I want to ask a real question to Representative Santoro. You mentioned, what I think is very vital, the local grant application, about $50 million, 50 for cities and 50 for counties. Could you explain a little bit more about that, if you can, in terms of maybe the process?
Well, it's really not a grant. It just goes into the
Sorry.
formula is what it is. So each city, the mayor or whoever, they will have funds now to take care of themselves, their own city or county. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So there'll be a process to make the request.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Representative Fleming, this is $50 million influx, $25 million to counties, $25 million to cities. It goes directly into the formula that's already in place to the gas tax.
All right, thank
you.
you.
So this is just a direct influx of
Okay,
that.
good. That's
And
thank
if
you, sir.
If I may, I'm going to put just a little context on that for why it was even talked about in the first place. Last year, we took general fund money to a certain degree, maybe around $57 to $60 million, and backfilled certain things that have been siphoned off for long-standing practice out of the road fund to pay for other stuff. So that money wasn't siphoned off anymore. And then in this budget bill, as we had intended, coming even from last session, looking at this, we intended on taking even less from the road fund, which is now zeroed out, and now we're actually pushing money into the road fund so more of it can actually go to the ground. Last year, when we took that first step, we received some comments back about, wait a minute, you haven't made the locals whole. Well, this is why I want to explain this. Any money that had been utilized from the road fund previously, you have to understand money comes into the road fund and then it's split off to the state side and to the local side. What had been siphoned off previous budgets, decades, has been siphoned only off the state side. So there had been no harm to the locals in the way that's been done in budget process for years and years and years. We were trying to cure the state side. But in so doing, we heard from many, many locals about their needs. And so in weighing up priorities, we decided in this particular budget cycle to go ahead and put in an additional $50 million each year divided between the cities and locals to help out. It won't fix everything, but it will help out those local needs that we heard so much about in response to the movements we made last session. Now, we're not changing formula. We're not changing anything. The road fund splits off of the state and local side. We're backfilling general fund on the state side, as we've discussed. This is simply general fund going into the local pool also for normal processing. It's just to help out. All right. You have any question? Okay. Any other questions? We have a motion on the bill, and there has been a second on the bill. Any other discussion? Seeing none? Flood? Okay. Representative Flood, are you online?
Yes, sir.
And
Thank you so much.
And if you have a question or comment, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Santoro, could you please help me understand? I recognize that there is a huge shift taking place in the way the budget is coming together. What I'm trying to understand is, in this vote today, is this it on the transportation bill? Are we even looking at the governor's bill? Are we going to be doing a negotiation, or is it more like, this is it? This is the transportation budget. We've gotten their input and we're done, and here we are. Because that's a different vote today going on then. I'm trying to understand where we are in the process.
I'm going to jump in on that one real quick. We received the governor's recommendations through budget bills. We've talked with them, and Representative Santoro has done the same all along the way. Met with the executive branch this week for about an hour and a half after we tore through the bills, trying to understand them and analyze them as best we can. And I think when we left that meeting with Budget Director Hicks as well as Rocky Atkins, as senior advisor, they understood and we understood that this is the first step in a process. This gets us going through the House, and then we go to the Senate, and then we go back to conference. Am I going to tell you that this will be the end result, the end budget for transportation? No. Is this what we're proposing on the House side after looking at all other recommendations, including any other bills filed and any other input we've received? Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Representative Beckler.
Aye.
Representative Bentley.
Yes.
Representative Blanton.
Aye.
Representative Bridges.
Yes.
Representative Dossett.
Yes.
Representative Fisher.
Yes.
Representative Fleming.
Aye.
Representative Flood.
Explain my vote.
Please.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this is a very critical bill, and enough is not clear yet in my mind where today I pass to discern more about what it actually means and how we're moving forward. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll pass today.
Representative Fugate.
Yes.
Representative Gentry.
Explain my vote, please.
Please.
Just briefly, I'm going to pass at this moment because I just haven't had enough time to digest what's in the substitute. Thank you.
Representative Hale.
Yes.
Representative Hart. Representative Hatton.
Yes.
Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Nemus.
Yes.
Representative Palumbo.
Can I explain my vote, please?
Please.
I'm voting yes, and I want to thank Representative Santoro for his hard work on this bill. Thank you, sir.
Representative Prunty. Representative Raymond.
Yes.
Representative Reed.
Yes.
Representative Riley. Yes. Representative Santoro.
Yes.
Representative Tipton.
Yes.
Representative Wilner.
I'd like to briefly explain my yes vote if I could.
Please.
So I am voting yes today out of respect for the work that the budget staff has done and that Representative Santoro has done. I really like a lot of the language we heard today, reigniting our transportation budget, new investments, forward thinking. I really am very impressed by that. I like the idea that we're going to leverage every state dollar to match every federal fund that's available to us. So I'm a yes for today. We just got the substitute last night. I've not had a chance to hear from constituents, so I'm going to reserve the right to change my vote on the House floor, but I'm very impressed with what I heard today. Thank you.
Chairman Petrie.
I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to explain just to help people along in the process. My fault for not saying so earlier. The committee sub, just so to ease the process of digesting, really has only 2 technical changes, just language catches, nothing more, no substantive changes whatsoever. So if you have read the original 241 filed almost 2 weeks ago, it is, except for 2 truly technical corrections, it's the same in substance. So that should help the digesting process. And I did vote yes. What we got? 20 yes. How many noes? And 2 passes. House Bill 241 as amended by Committee Substitute 1, having received 20 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 2 passes, shall pass from this committee with favorable adoption, and the same should pass on the floor.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Santoro.
Mr. Chairman, we will now take up House Bill 1.
We'll call House Bill 1.
I move for adoption of House Committee Sub 1 to House Bill 1.
We have House Committee Substitute 1 for House Bill 1. Motion, second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We have before it's adopted. We have before us House Committee Substitute to House Bill number 1. Representative Reed, I will remind you that you remain oath, and I will acknowledge that I remain under the same. Representative Tipton, if you will introduce yourself for the record, and then I'll administer the oath.
Representative James Tipton, House District 53.
Raise your right hand. Will you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed. And before we do that, before we proceed on this bill, I do want to get back to the last bill on House Bill 241 as amended by Committee Substitute 1. Representative Gentry, are you online? I've received a note to recognize you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on your comments a while ago about the only 2 small technical changes, I would like to change my vote to a yes from a pass.
That is so recognized. Thank you very much, and I apologize to you and the other person, representative, that passed. I should have made that clear at the beginning. I failed to do so. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, just to explain a little bit of the process, I will call up each subcommittee chair one by one as we proceed through the budget. As Representative Tipton is now, we will save all the questions to the very end. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Chairman Tipton.
All right, Chairman Tipton, if you will proceed on your subject matter, announce it, and then please inform us.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the privilege to have the opportunity to be the first subcommittee chair to share with this committee and the citizens of the Commonwealth this proposed budget, because it is an investment in our state, it's an investment in our people, and I truly believe that it will revitalize our state and our economy. I chair the Budget Review Subcommittee for Post-Secondary Education, and this is the 6th year that I have served in that role. I have met with many university presidents who have come to me with budget requests, with concerns, and unfortunately, due to decisions that have been made in the past, economic circumstances that have come about, we have not been able to make the investments that we should have. There have actually been cuts. But we have a different story this year, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to begin sharing with what was in the original House Bill 1. Back in 2017, we passed legislation adopting performance-based funding for our universities, our community college system. We made some changes to that legislation last year in 2021, which I believe were very vital to the future of this process. And I'm pleased to announce that in each year of the biennium, we will be appropriating $50 million to the performance-based funding model. $50 million in each year to these universities, our community colleges across the state, or have 16 colleges in their Kentucky community college system, so they can compete based on the metrics of that model. We all understand that we have a healthcare crisis right now with COVID. We have a shortage of workers in the healthcare field. I'm pleased to share that this budget funds a new healthcare workforce initiative at $20 million each year. We're going to invest $20 million each year to try to improve our healthcare workforce. Last session, we passed House Bill 8, which dealt with pensions of those qualified members of our pension system. I'm pleased to announce that this budget fully funds the subsidy that's necessary for retirement benefits that are owed under House Bill 8 from last session. As I mentioned, I've talked to a lot of university presidents, and every year they come to me and say, we need asset preservation. We have buildings. We have roof problems. We have infrastructure problems. We need new HVAC systems. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to perform on that. But this year's a different story, Mr. Chairman. We're going to appropriate $350 million. I said $350 million in each year of the biennium. That will be divided between our public universities and the KCTCS system to maintain buildings and facilities. The funds will be available to these institutions based on the square footage of the facilities model established in the performance-based funding model. I touched on workforce and healthcare a minute ago. We have workforce issues all across the Commonwealth. We're going to fully fund a workforce participation trust fund at every KCTCS institution across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Earlier, I had a subcommittee meeting this morning at 10 o'clock. In that meeting, one of the presenters was President Capilouto at the University of Kentucky. And I asked him to come and share a little bit about Bucks for Brains. I mentioned in my 6 years, we've never appropriated any money for Bucks for Brains. And as we had our conversation this morning, I believe we're looking back around 2008, 2010. And what Bucks for Brains is, it's an initiative for research. It's an initiative where they can go out and try to attract individuals to come into our state, primarily at UK and U of L, to do research. And I want to share about one of the benefits of the past investment that's been made. UK has one of the top cancer centers in the country, and that's been made possible because of the past investments that have been made. Unfortunately, Kentucky is #1 in the nation in cancer. The director of that cancer center has a goal. His goal is to cut the rate of cancer in our Commonwealth by 50%. Investments like this in Bucks for Brains will help make that possible. And I'm pleased to announce that we are appropriating $15 million in each year of the budget to revitalize and restart the Bucks for Brains program across our university system. I've been meeting with a lot of people, Mr. Chairman. I had the chairman of the lottery in my office a few minutes ago. We all know that the lottery funds go to our Key Scholarship, our grants, to help our students attain their goals. And I'm pleased to announce that due to growth in the lottery and the availability of funds, we're going to provide an additional $42 million in each year. That's $42 million that our children or students across the state will be able to utilize in the CAP program, our College Access Program. That's the program for students who attend our public universities. The KTG program, Kentucky Tuition Grant, that is for those students who are in the private institutions, private universities across Kentucky. And our Work Ready Scholarship Program for those individuals who do not have an associate's degree. and they want to upskill. Those additional funds will be available. Now, all that was as exciting as House Bill 1 originally was. Let me share a little bit about what's in the committee sub for post-secondary. We have reached out to every public university, our Kentucky Community Technical College system, and they've all got capital projects, and we've asked them to prioritize those projects, and we are fully funding the number one priority capital project for all our public universities and community college system across the state. I talked about scholarships and grants. In order to make that possible, we have KIA, the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. KIA has never received any general fund appropriation since its existence. It has always been funded by servicing student loans. Unfortunately, there have been changes in Washington to the student loan program. With loan forgiveness, other things, loans have been taken away from them, so they are no longer able to generate the revenue they have in the past. So we are appropriating $6 million in each year of general fund dollars so they can continue to administer these vital programs for our children across the state. Mr. Chairman, this may be one of my favorites. We used to have model schools, laboratory schools at most all of our universities. We only have one left in the state of Kentucky right now, and that's at Eastern Kentucky University. Representative Hatton, we were over there a few weeks ago, and this subject came up. We are going to bond fund a replacement facility for the model lab at Eastern Kentucky University. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you very much, Chairman Tipton. And I'm going to reiterate so I don't make the same mistake I made in the first section. First bill. Committee sub, if you're looking for differences, just for help for digestion purposes, goes back. We had started to gather the information, but this completes, after consultation with each of the universities and KCTS, the sub funds the number one priority set by, number one capital project priority by each of those institutions. Number two, it adds a little over $6 million of general fund money to fully fund the operations budgets of KIA and to actually deal with some needed repairs on roof and HVAC for the functioning of that building facility. And then the third main thing difference on the committee sub is bonded funding for a replacement facility for the model lab at EKU. There may be other small, but they would be technical at best, and no other substantive changes of which I am aware. Just wanted to make sure that was clarified. And now I see that we have Representative Reed again, and I have someone else.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we have Representative Riley, Chairman of the K-12 Education Subcommittee. Would you please administer the oath?
If you will go ahead and introduce yourself for the record first.
Steve Riley, State Representative, 23rd District.
If you'll raise your right hand, you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and Vice Chairman Reed for all of your hard work. I'd like to thank Frank and Jacob for their hard work, and all the LRC staff. I want to especially give a special shout out to my staff on the BR subcommittee on K through 12 and workforce development. A bunch of them are sitting over here. I couldn't do anything without them. They're great. The education funding is going to be record breaking. It's done in both a strategic and sustainable way. I'm very excited about what this is going to mean for the youth of Kentucky and their education. First of all, it increases the basic guarantee to a record high dollar amount of $4,100 in the first fiscal year and $4,200 in the second fiscal year. Every dollar SEEK is increased translates into an additional investment of $800,000 in public school districts. That comes to a total of first year $80 million, second year $160 million. Permanently funds the second half of full-day kindergarten in both fiscal years. And I know this has been something that a lot of us have pushed for. Representative Tipton has been very involved in this, and a lot of people in this state for a number of years have been involved in trying to access full-day kindergarten. It increases transportation funding from approximately 51% to a minimum of 70%, with some districts at 100%. And I know this has been something that's been pushed a great deal over the last few years because of increasing transportation costs. It increases funding to eligible family resource and youth service centers, more commonly known as Friskies, from approximately $184 to $220 per student. The ask was $200, and through the goodness of many folks on this, that is going to be increased to $220, totaling $12.7 million additional in each year, and this money will be invaluable for our students that are in needy situations. It fully funds Kentucky Teachers Retirement System at to actuarially required contribution rather than that required by law. The statutorily required contribution would be $438 million. This plan allocates an estimated $1.067 billion in the first year and $1.084 billion in the second year. Those figures are $629 million and $646 million above the statutory rate. This budget stops the long-standing practice of funding the cost of past teacher cost of living adjustments and sick leave payouts by a loan from KTRS, which the state pays on that as a 7.5% interest rate. That is a total of $479 million. This budget fully funds the state portion of health insurance for retired teachers under the age of 65, and that is for both years. It it provides certified speech pathologists and audiologists the same pay subsidy as certified teachers. And we know we have a crisis there and that we do not have the numbers that we need in those positions. Going to vocational education. This budget fully funds vocational education transportation at an additional $5.4 million a year. It also adds an additional $30 million each year general fund to raise the level of funding to LAVEX and fund all school districts that operate a program with 5 or more career and technical program areas. It also provides an additional $155 million for LAVEX revitalization and renovation projects that did not receive funding from the grant program last year. I think we all realize that we have a workforce development problem, and hopefully this will be part of the solution to solving that issue. Also, I want to add that Ludlow High School, the oldest high school in the state, which was built in 1902, it adds it to the list of critical needs schools to be renovated or replaced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Riley. Just for clarification purposes, I want to make sure for processing the committee sub, the 3 substantive changes that the committee sub makes from the bill is the $30 million each year additional funding general fund to raise the level of funding for LAVEX and for those school districts that have a working tech program without a separate building, and provides the $155 million for LAVEX revitalization and renovation projects that complete and add on to what we started last session. And then the Ludlow High School, which is the oldest school at 1902, moving it up the list on critical needs. There may be technical catches, but otherwise those are the 3 substantive changes for the committee sub to the original bill filed on the 7th. Anything else further on your section, Representative Riley? Thank you so very much. Representative Reed.
Chairman, at this time, I call Representative Bentley, Chairman of the Budget Sub-Chair on Health and Family Services, to the table.
Representative Bentley, if you will introduce yourself for the record, please.
My name, excuse me. My name is Danny R. Bentley, representative for District 98 for the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
You can raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Mr. Chairman, My subcommittee is Health and Family Services. Two important words to everyone in the Commonwealth: health and family. This is very dear to my heart since I'm a medical care provider myself. It's a privilege to be here, and we're looking for a better way for better health for the Commonwealth. We've thought about seniors, children, Michelle P. waivers, and I'd like to explain further. In this bill, we are going to provide necessary funding to implement the Public Health Transformation Act, HB 129 of 2020, to ensure public health departments are financially able to continuing serving our communities. Very proud of them how they've served us during the crisis, and we're going to continue that funding. We're going to allocate $2.5 million to the area health educational centers. Very successful at recruiting. We need recruiting in Kentucky where we have shortages. We're going to raise the salary and institute a retention payment for social workers, totaling approximately $25.5 million increase in the first year and $51.7 million increase in the second year. Our social workers are very short. We're going to fund 100 additional social worker positions in each year of the budget for a total of 200, and provide a method of tracking this implementation of increased staffing. We're going to raise the reimbursement rate of the 1915C Michelle P. waiver, home and community-based services waiver services by 10% in each year of the budget. We're going to fully fund the increase in the nursing home reimbursement rate implemented by fiscal year 21. Provides mental health services to rural communities through a mobile crisis service expansion. Excellent idea. Ensures funding for Medicaid growth and reduction in the federal reimbursement totaling $1.024 billion in fiscal year 23-24. This is huge. Increased funding to the eligible family resource and youth services, as Representative Riley mentioned before. We had some adds to our committee sub. We're going to clarify the SCL and Michelle P. language to ensure the current rate is maintained, and then the increases are given. Second thing, we're going to provide $7.2 million additional general fund in fiscal year 22-23 and $14.4 million general fund to expand the senior meals program as the governor recommended. My mother will be 98 next week. She receives these meals. And last, 988, the National Suicide Hotline is fully funded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bentley. For clarification's sake and nothing more, committee substitute really has two substantive changes, which Chairman has already mentioned. I'm just going to highlight again. In addition to what was already proposed in House Bill 1 filed on the 7th, the sub addresses these two issues. Just make sure that the increases given each year of 10% to Michelle P's and SCO waivers, that increase is on top of a current rate holding. So the rate doesn't go down and then get an increase. It holds and then it increases. Just clarifying language. Number two, $7.2 million additional general fund money in 22-23 and $14.4 million in the following year to expand coverage for the senior meals program. Anything else, Chairman Bentley, on this subject matter?
We're good.
No,
Thank
sir.
you very much. Representative Reed?
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Fisher, Chairman of the Justice and Judiciary Subcommittee.
Before Representative Fisher helps us understand this subject matter, I want to caution clarification and analysis and a digestion of these materials. Sometimes people confuse issues that are in the judicial branch budget with what's in the executive branch budget regarding justice. Those are not the same things. So you may be thinking certain topics, and Chairman Fisher is going to cover those things that are proper before the justice subject matter in the executive branch bill. If you will, introduce yourself for the record, please.
Representative Joe Fisher, 68th House District.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Subcommittee on Justice and Public Safety used the interim to reach out to our law enforcement community. There has been an alarming turnover of personnel in our Kentucky State Police and other agencies here in Kentucky, and we wanted to get to the bottom of that and how we could help resolve that issue. And this budget, once and for all, rejects the dangerous ideology that we must defund the police. Instead, we have strengthened our state police force by investing record amounts, record increases in virtually every area of law enforcement. Let me give you a few examples. This budget grants a $15,000 pay increase to every Kentucky state trooper and motor vehicle enforcement officer. Now, what does that mean for a new recruit? It represents a 37.5% salary boost. This should provide a recruitment boost for the Kentucky State Police. It also gives an $8,000 raise to all telecommunication personnel. We heard from the state medical examiner's office, and we increased their state budget by $1 million. We heard from the forensic lab personnel, and that gives another pay increase and provides funding to replace their obsolete lab equipment. And this is the big allocation in this budget. $215 million to the State Police Retirement Fund. And what does this mean? KSP's employee contribution rate will go from 141% of their salary to 100% of the salary. This frees up additional funds for the state police to increase salaries of personnel and purchase equipment going forward. It also funds the purchase of an integrated body camera system for the Kentucky State Police, and this includes the expensive item of computerized storage of that information. It also provides funding to complete the purchase of a new radio system for the Kentucky State Police. And for years, we've heard from the Department of Criminal Justice Training. They've come to us for money to reconstruct their indoor firing range training facility at Eastern Kentucky University. We have funded the entire purchase price of $28.5 million in this budget. And finally, for several years, our jailers and counties have been begging for a significant increase in the per diem payment to house state prisoners. This budget will raise the state per diem payment from $31.34 to $35.34 per day. This represents a 12% increase from the current contribution. Now, Mr. Chairman, this budget does reward those who protect us from those who would harm us. If there are any questions.
Chairman Fisher, I appreciate it very much. We're going to hold questions to the end. And just to note, for clarification purposes, the committee sub changes nothing in this subject matter. So House Bill 1, as set forth on this subject matter, should remain unchanged. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call Representative Beckler, Chairman of the Chairman Economic Development, Tourism, and Parks, to the table.
If you'll introduce yourself for the record, please.
Lynn Beckler,
State Representative, District 4.
You raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I'm here today to talk a little bit about the economic development work we've done over the interim. We've had several meetings with the Tourism, Parks, and Recreation Department to address the needs of the Kentucky State Park, the nation's finest. Based on their input, we've gone ahead and we are allocating $123.6 million over the biennium for 27 specific projects to upgrade the parks. We are upgrading areas such as fitness centers, campgrounds, equipment replacement and upgrades, cottage refurbishment, etc. In addition, we've taken a look at the rural product development initiative for rural business site development. The rural areas of this state are suffering, as everyone knows, to get economic development. We are allocating $100 million in fiscal year 2022-2023 for this initiative, and we'll take a look, the legislature will take a look in 2023 based on the recommendations that that come to us. Lastly, we are providing an additional $2.5 million in each fiscal year for additional funding for the Bluegrass State Skills Program. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Beckler. And for clarification's sake, I assume people caught this, but the 27 renovation and refurbishment projects to the tune of $123 million plus was included in original House Bill 1. The committee singular subject matter change is an increase of allocation to $100 million for the Rural Product Development Initiative to identify industrial sites and develop the infrastructure needed around those. I'm unaware of any other changes unless they were technical in nature, but that's the only substantive change of which I am aware. Anything else, Chairman Beckler, at this time? No, sir. Thank you very much. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Blanton, Chairman of the General Government Subcommittee.
If you will introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Blanton. I'm representative of the 92nd District.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Let me begin by saying thank you to all of our hardworking staff. Without them, this task would be nearly impossible. We thank you for your dedicated work. We thank you for putting up with us as well. I am very excited to bring the general government budget before you today as the state is moving forward for once in a long time of meeting so many needs that has went unaddressed for so many years within this Commonwealth. And I use the phrase needs, and we've heard that a lot today. I want to remind everyone what this budget is. This budget is every one of you that's in this room today. If you are a citizen of this Commonwealth, it's your tax dollars. We have taken a needs, reasonable approach to spending the monies. Just as if we had an influx of money at home, we wouldn't want to go out and spend it all on something when we've got debts that we have incurred. So we've taken a very, very much needs approach and funded many things that are long overdue. And it brings great honor to me because it's been a personal endeavor of mine to announce that one of the first things that we do is we provide a 6% pay increase to all public employees in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. They've been many years without any type of pay increase whatsoever, and that is for the fiscal year 22-23. However, this also addresses an issue within the salaries of our state employees. And unfortunately, we asked for this information and did not receive it during the interim, during the work of this budget. So we are requiring the Secretary of the Personnel Cabinet to develop a plan to revise the classification and compensation for funding in the second year. What does that mean? Currently in Kentucky, because there have not been any cost of living adjustment raises in so many years, we have ran into a pay disparity. We are in competition with private sector in hiring employees. And what has happened in many areas of the state, as we open up job classifications, job opportunities, people are not applying because they can get jobs in the private sector. So what we have in the Commonwealth of Kentucky is a pay scale. And that pay scale has a beginning, it has a midpoint, and it has an upper point. And we slowly inched ourselves up of beginning people at that midpoint range. What does that mean? That means we have employees within the Commonwealth that's been working 5, maybe 10 years, and we're hiring somebody tomorrow, and they're starting at equal and maybe sometimes more than somebody that has been a dedicated employee to this Commonwealth. We want to fix that problem. But it begins with the Secretary of the Personnel Cabinet developing a plan how we revise this classification and this pay disparity so we can get things balanced to where they ought to be. That's one. Second thing is very personal and dear to me, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But we are allocating another $350 million in ARPA funds toward funding of clean water and wastewater projects to be allocated to each county by population. Why is that so important to me? One of my platforms when I first began my run to come here was to bring clean drinking water in my district because we still have people without it. I had one gentleman whose drinking water he took and he showed me. It was a shame what the family was having to deal with. Just a few months ago, I got a phone call with a grown man in tears thanking me when they began laying the water line by his house. It's important that we provide clean drinking water to all those in this Commonwealth, and it also provides for economic development opportunities as well for us. Another thing, in being conscientious with taxpayer dollars, we are in this budget eliminating the practice of bonding to pay for maintenance and repair projects through agency maintenance pools. We are providing cash, not bonds, for capital projects that are less than $3 million. Bonds are something we have to pay interest rates on. And when we're paying interest rates, it's like a credit card. We're losing money every time we do it. It's just being responsible with taxpayer dollars, and we are no longer going to practice the issuance of bonds for capital projects less than $3 million. We are also going to be providing funds for the startup operation of the Bowling Green Veterans Nursing Home in the second year. Along with that will be the language that will continue in our budget that says it is the intent of the General Assembly that the next Veterans Nursing Home be in McGoffin County in eastern Kentucky. We will provide funding for additional personnel in the Office of the Attorney General, the Commonwealth's attorneys across this state, and the county attorneys across this state. We will allocate a total of $10 million towards a population-based grant pool under the Department of Local Government that will allow each representative and senator to award grants to local governments, educational units, and quasi-government agencies. That means every member of the General Assembly will equally have a portion of funding to use in their districts to help with projects. Every single member, 138 members, will have an equal amount to use in their districts. We will provide $500,000 in each year of the budget for the Raising Hope Initiative. It is a farmer suicide prevention and safety program that will be moved to the Department of Agriculture. Another issue very close and dear to my heart, we will provide an increase in the CLEP funding for our police and fire across the Commonwealth from $4,000 to $4,300. Into every volunteer fire department in the Commonwealth, we will increase their funding from $11,000 to $11,500 per fire department. Also, coming from a coal region and a coal county, we will be providing after debt services. 100% coal severance monies will be returned to our coal counties from which they came. One thing that the committee sub does, and I will wrap things up with this. We will be using ARPA funds to return the unemployment insurance fund to pre-pandemic levels by allocating $312 million to our unemployment insurance fund. What does that mean? If you recall, not only did we deplete it, but we took a loan from the federal government to prop up that program. We've repaid that money. We're restoring it to the pre-pandemic levels so that we can have unemployment insurance available for those of our hardworking men and women in this Commonwealth when they are in their most dire need. Mr. Chairman, it's been an honor to work with you, every member of this staff, in creating and drafting this budget. A reasonable, responsible budget that meets the needs of this Commonwealth, that looks at after our tax dollars much like we would look after our own monies at home. It's reasonable, it's responsible, and it's a good budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. For clarification purposes, committee substitute, the original House Bill 1 was discussed to include $312 million in ARPA funds to restore the unemployment insurance trust fund to pre-pandemic levels. The committee sub catches that language and makes sure that's accomplished. So no new substantive materials in the committee sub. These were discussed. It's just that the language didn't catch it sufficiently, and so that has been clarified and made clear. Otherwise, no technical or substantive changes. Representative Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I call to the table Representative Dossett, Chairman of the Personnel and Public Pensions Subcommittee.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Representative Myron, 9th District Representative Myron Dossett.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am proud to say that for the third consecutive budget cycle since the House became the change of the majority in the House to the Republican Party, I am proud to say that we are fully funding the actuarially required contribution for both KRS and TRS. We are also placing more than $1.2 billion additional dollars into the TRS fund. This budget will fully fund the ARC for the Kentucky retirement system at $1.2 billion per year. It will fully fund the ARC for Kentucky teachers' retirement system at an estimated $1.67 billion in the first year and $1.084 billion the second year. There will be an additional $629 million contributed in the first year, and an additional $646 million in the second year. It provides, as we have been told earlier, $215 million to the Kentucky State Police Retirement Fund to reduce the employer contribution rate from 141% to 100%. It provides $200 million to the general fund in the current year to pay on the KERS non-hazard unfunded liability. And it funds House Bill 8 subsidy for regional post-secondary institutions to ensure universities to pay their actual share of the pension debt. There are no changes in this portion of the budget from the committee sub. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Dawson. Representative Reed, anything else on that subject matter?
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption of House Bill 1 as amended by the committee sub.
A second. I have a second. We have a motion on the bill, House Bill 1, as amended by Committee Substitute 1, with a second thereon. Any questions, any discussion? Sorry? Okay. Representative Wilner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
Representative
thank you to all the presenters. I heard so much stuff that I like in this budget. There's a lot of stuff to be excited about here. I do have some questions.
Representative Wilner, is your mic on and
It
sufficiently
is.
close?
Let me move it a little
Thank
closer.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I noticed this is a general question. In the second year of the budget, it looks like fiscal year 24 has recurring revenues that are $1 billion more than expenditures for that year. And so I'm curious why we're holding on to so much when there's so much need across the state. So that's a general question.
I tell you what, I'm going to try to box the issue in so we can start looking at it clearly. Okay, so I'm going to give a little more information than you're asking for, but I think it'll help with your question and maybe some others. Bear with me, and I'm going to try to do this slowly so everybody can think along with me. But I'm just going to relate that in the current fiscal year, there's about $2 billion worth of expenditures flowing through this bill. In FY 22-23, through this bill as amended, there'd be about $56.1 billion that would flow through. In FY 23-24, it would be approximately $46.9 billion that flows through. Of those big dollar figures, those are the grand totals. Within that, current year, we have general fund appropriations of approximately $1 billion. FY 22-23, first year of the biennium, it's approximately $13.139 billion general fund. And in fiscal year 23-24, it would be about $13,664 million general funds. Current year, the bill would flow $47.4 million in restricted funds. First year of the biennium, it will be about $20.1 billion in restricted. Second year of the biennium, it will be approximately $14.5 billion. Current year, federal funds would flow about $932 million. First year of the biennium, $19.4 billion. FY 23-24, approximately $18.1 billion. Other funds, nothing in current year, about $3 billion in 22-23, and FY 23-24, about $250 million. Once you take those top grand totals, account for each of the individual pieces therein, appropriations, and then you account for a budget reserve of about 40 to 45 days, 42 is my best guess at this point, budget reserve trust fund of about 40 to 45 days, totaling approximately $1.5 billion plus dollars for reserve trust account. That would leave in the current fiscal year approximately $546 million plus in unappropriated funds. FY 22-23, after those same processes applied, would result in approximately $252 plus million in unappropriated funds. Second year of the biennium 23-24, same process is applied, would result in about $343 plus million unappropriated. Now, I want to make sure we're not missing each other in language. I've laid out what the total flow of money, federal, restricted, general fund, and other, and how those total in current and FY1 and first year of the biennium and the second year of the biennium. We are maintaining, with all the appropriations for operations, plus a $1.5 plus billion reserve trust account, we result in those unappropriated funds in each of those years that I just mentioned. That would total up to unappropriated funds an approximate amount of, for current year and each of the 2 years of the biennium, approximately $1.142 billion in unappropriated funds. That means it's not going to operations, it's not going to reserve, it's not being set aside, it is unappropriated. Now, the reason I bring that into focus a little is this. Chairman Blanton made reference to this. These are things that the Budget Review sub-chairs and ourselves have talked about, staff has talked about a lot. We have, to the best of our ability, talking over the interim through the Budget Review subcommittee meetings, talking literally, Representative Reed and myself, who took almost every appointment together, over 200 meetings, well over 200 meetings. Amen. Yeah, amen. Having looked at hundreds of agency requests, line by line by line, seeking what information we can get and is available through the executive branch, whether it be in response to questions regarding those agency requests or through the budget review subcommittees or one-on-ones between myself, Representative Reed, and the members of the executive branch. We have attempted through this to appropriate monies to meet the needs of Kentucky. Reasonable minds will disagree about what are needs and what are wants. But we have, to the best of our ability, budgeted to the needs of Kentucky. We have not budgeted to our wants. We have not budgeted to individual wants, but to the needs of Kentucky. And in so doing, with the revenues projected available to us, less the appropriations made for operations that appear to be needed, and need is not just the bare bones. Need is also investment. Those are needed investments in this budget. When you take account of all those things and you maintain a needed, healthy reserve, budget reserve trust, and please refrain from calling that a rainy day fund, anybody in the media, because it's not, it doesn't exist, it's not in statute anywhere. A budget reserve trust fund is for the good times and the bad. If you'll recall, we were here in September in good times. And Budget Reserve Trust Fund had funds available so we could take advantage of an opportunity. So $1.5 billion to make sure we maintain that Budget Reserve Trust Fund. And even though we've appropriated some ARPA funds of $312 million to go to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund and return it to pre-pandemic levels, understand that the Unemployment Insurance Fund is one that's still got needs. We can't quite get to it yet. There's going to be needed reforms on this one particular issue. I'm not highlighting it because it's the most important. It's just an example. Restoring it to $312 million, that sounds tremendously good until you put it in a little bit of a proper context. Realize that $1 billion is the target mark. And since 1974, Kentucky's Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund has been insolvent by federal definition. Hence, downturn in 2008, hence most recent downturn, we have to go begging to the federal government because we don't have the money set aside in that Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund that is at least sufficient to not be insolvent by federal definition. So even though there are some needs that we still can't get to, and we have to have a longer-term view of how we get there, we have approximately $1.142 billion in unappropriated funds after getting to the needs that we can budget to and avoiding our wants. And of those monies, those are not ours. They do not belong to the General Assembly. They're not in our bank account. We have no special hold on them, and it doesn't have our thumbprints on it. And I know, I can see it on your face, you know exactly what I'm about to say. Whose money is it? It's a taxpayer's money. We have no claim to it. We have no right to it because it is only from the taxpayers and only from the people that elect us that there is any authority or power to do anything whatsoever for their benefit. So, when we look at those unappropriated general funds to the tune of $1.142 billion, I suggest we look at those as they truly are. They're not ours, they're the taxpayers. How do we best return that money? Now, there are, as we all know, other bills taking place in this session, and there will be more in the next two sessions, that deal with very important issues. And that $1.142 billion will likely shrink. There will be additional appropriations. I'm going to do my dead level best to make sure it doesn't shrink hardly at all. However, it likely will because there will be some things that come up. For instance, the bill we didn't hear today, 226, Read to Succeed. There will be other things that pop up. But at the end of the day, if we budget to our needs and treat that money that's there as taxpayer money that we're in trust for, that we have no right to, then we need to look at how do we return the balance. Now, no secret, people have talked about tax modernization, income tax, inventory taxes, all kinds of taxes. How do you get it back? We even have one that popped up, I think, on January 6th of this year, with executive branch letters going out warning all the locals, PVAs, and county clerks appraised values are going to go up on average 40% on everybody's cars, which means an increase in what you're going to have to pay on your car taxes to the tune of around 160 million plus on the state side of those funds that come in, not just the local. The local is probably twice, on average, twice the amount that the state receives. That may be a way to try to offset what looks to be a possible imbalance in that process. Just throw one more out. I think around 1998, the great voters of Kentucky gave the General Assembly the power to cut that rate and eliminate that rate, eliminate that tax. Hasn't been done yet, but that's one thing. And then we always have income tax, personal, and we have other taxes that are on the table. So I suggest if we do a budget to the needs, we avoid our individual wants, and we end up with unappropriated funds, then we find the best method of delivery back to the taxpayers who lent that money to us to begin with.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that very thorough response to my question. Could I ask a couple more questions
Please
about
do.
needs?
Please do.
And thank you for framing it that way. I heard the 37.5% salary boost for state troopers, which I fully support that. And I'm just interested in how that compares to proposed raises for other vital employees, our teachers, and we know there's a severe teacher shortage, how that compares to our social workers. And, we know we've been number one for 3 years running in child abuse in the state, and I think we could all agree that that is a need that needs to be addressed. So our social workers, and then also I think we've all agreed through Senate Bill 1 in 2019 and Senate Bill 8 in 2020 that school mental health is a vital need. And I don't see funding for school mental health specifically reflected in the budget. So teachers, social workers, and school mental health are some of the things that I see as vital needs for the state. And I'm curious to learn more about what we're doing there.
Very much appreciate the question. I'll try to hit those in good order. So social workers in this budget, and it was highlighted by the chairman over that subject matter, what the executive branch did late last year was to take vacancy money and grant, I believe, a 10% raise. So no new funds, but retooled what funds were available, and those funds were available and the vacancies were available because we were bleeding so many workers. So what we chose to do in this bill is maintain that 10% raise. And then they are state workers, 18A state workers. And as such, they would also receive, in addition, the 6% raise. Now, I agree with you. Social workers, I've worked juvenile cases for 23 years, and I see part of what they do. And you couldn't pay me enough money to do it personally. We are losing numbers, and it is a vital service. It is a need area. So we maintained that 10% raise and then included them in the 6% raise on top. That is different from and more than what was included in other budget recommendations received this session. Social workers, teachers. Chairman Riley had mentioned that we were increasing SEEK by $80 million in the first year and $160 million in the second year. He also mentioned that we are increasing transportation funding. We are increasing transportation funding to make sure we get from approximately 51% across districts to at least 70% with approximately 32 districts hitting 100% funding. That equates to approximately a little over $57 million itself. Then we added in vocational education transportation at $5.4 million. We are fully funding that other half day of kindergarten, which would be $120 million plus. Now, SEEK, I'm going to set off to the side just for a moment, but it's included. Those others all together push general fund money into the local budgets, and all of that money is freed up discretionary at the district level. SEEK money, not operating exactly the same, but pushing in money to each local district through the formula to the tune of $80 million in the first year and $160 million in the second year. We've pulled data for nearly all of that. There's a tremendous amount of money going into each district, SEEK, as well as freeing up discretionary funds. We've encouraged districts to look at school teacher raises. However, we could not justify doing a set fixed percentage. And the reason being is this. We have some districts that have given $10,000 bonuses, $6,000 bonuses, 2% raises, 6% raises. The market for teachers is very local. The needs for particular types of teachers are very local. Frankfort doesn't know best on that. So we've opted to give discretion to the districts with a lot of funding. So not only raises, they can put that on the table in order and priority, but they can look at all of the needs that they have and adjust their discretionary funds and to some degree the SEEK funds for what needs to be done. KSP, we've already hit. That's a $15,000 raise across the board for KSP troopers and motor vehicle enforcement, as well as an $8,000 for dispatchers. We are losing numbers. Our complement of KSP has gone historically from around 1,100 down to about less than 750 right now. This issue was an issue last session. We noted it, and on June the 2nd, we convened a budget review subcommittee. At our request, KSP Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel Nall come in and took us through the details of what the problems were and how bad the situation was. They did an excellent job in December the year preceding, presenting to me in writing those issues, but I wanted them to come in, and the BR sub-chair agreed, let's get this highlighted so we can start working on it. This is a culmination of that work of how are we going to address our premier law enforcement agency in Kentucky so that it is the leader and the example for the rest of our law enforcement. As far as the mental health professionals, Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 8 you mentioned, I hope, and I will leave that as the word hope, that there will be a separate standalone bill that talks about some school safety, and this may or may not be a component in that. I'm not going to attach a dollar figure to it, and I'm not going to promise. I'm going to simply say I hope. Now, whenever we talk about hiring people that are needed personnel, and I can even go back to social workers, we allotted additional social worker slots. I think it was 100 each year. We also had to track implementation of that because, as we all know in this room, how easy is it to find somebody to work at McDonald's right now? How easy is it to find somebody at a high-end restaurant? How easy is it to find somebody to hit the manufacturing floor or work in an accounting department? Or just be public service, customer service somewhere? Work shortage in Kentucky is extreme at this point. Workforce participation is extremely low at this point. When you talk about people with skills and degrees, it is extraordinarily hard, difficult to find them. So we could, hypothetically, fund 5,000 slots for mental health workers. Good luck finding 50 over the next 2 years because of where our workforce shortage is at this moment and the labor markets are at this moment. So I do not agree with, yeah, that's a need we need to be looking at. But all needs are in order of priority. They're not all the same. And they're not all the circumstances the same with the amount of funds and work shortages. So I hope that we get to some public safety in public schools. We will see. I think that hits each of the issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Representative Flood, are you online?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. I want to draw your attention, sir. I think this might be my only opportunity to the one place where I believe there is genuine need still, and we can do more. I am very glad to see an increase in the 10% to the Michelle P. waivers and also 50 additional slots there and in the community-based living supports. I would say to you, though, good sir, that because the governor's bill did put out a path for 500 slots in Michelle P. waiver and 100 in the community-based services, that led to, I've not seen in a long time because I'm talking with so many families. That's my main priority right now. The families with autism is my group, that they were joyous at that potential transformative number. And while I see the work that's been put together here to build layers of support to providers as well as this potential to do more in the slots is the one thing I'd like to ask you to consider. If taxpayers who can't really fight for themselves as well are people living with differing disabilities across the state who need us. And I would say this is a moment. So I put that out to you, sir, as a place where we could do more. Thank you.
I do appreciate that. And if you'll recall, we actually brought this issue up early in the interim in A&R, and I think you made a very kind comment about that. And what we have, with a lot of stakeholder work over almost 8 months at this point, determined that the first key to dealing with the 1915 Cs, and particularly the Michelle P. and the SCLs, is we do not have the workforce to actually implement slots that might be made available. We're in extreme shortage now. So the first thing we focused on was giving a 10% and then another 10% increase in that reimbursement so they could work on, the people on the ground could work on actually refilling their workforce. Now,
so to build capacity, sir, is what you're getting at.
Yes, correct.
If I may.
Yes.
One subtlety. If we go that route, if that's where we stay, please consider then something we can do that doesn't cost money, which is create a list of people who are already certified, have already gotten their, how you have to get cleared. If we had that list for families, that could make a significant difference if we don't increase slots, if we know those on the ground who are able to be hired and being paid more, and the families don't have to pay for their vetting every time. That would be significant.
I would be happy to work on that issue. And so I'm going to get to the second part of that. Once we worked on building traction on the workforce, then we put in additional slots. You can promise 1,250, 5,000, 15,000 slots. There's two big categorical problems with that. One, we don't have the capacity to actually process the applications and find out who's eligible and who's not. It's a slow process, number one. Number two, as I stated earlier, the workforce to actually implement the slots on the ground. So we're wanting to make sure we have the capacity, work on that, start increasing the slots. We will monitor, just like we're going to monitor the hiring of social workers and make sure the numbers fill up. We're going to monitor these slots and make sure that they're being utilized. If we see that they're able to be utilized as a workforce issue as well as a processing issue faster than what we've envisioned, I would be happy to take that back up consideration in the next session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I found my answer in the material. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Representative Gentry, you're online.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Representative Flood stole my thunder there a little bit. So that was the very issue that I was going to ask about and talk about. So I'm assuming I fully understand and appreciate the conversation that just happened. We have some capacity issues we need to address. And I assume this would be one of the need examples down the road that maybe we could tap into some of the budget reserve trust fund that we set aside for things that come up possibly. Am I on the right track?
You're on the right track. I'm not going to agree to the reserve trust fund necessarily, what the sourcing may be, but the issue is going to be one that we have to monitor. It's not one of those one and done issues. Okay, we've completed it. We will continue to monitor this just like we did in the interim, and we're going to do it again.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the only other question I have, and I guess I could just direct this directly to you, and just the amounts that we're setting aside in the budget reserve trust fund, is there an amount of that you're specifically planning to push toward tax reform this session?
The Budget Reserve Trust Fund is not intended to be used for any purpose other than what the Reserve Trust Fund is originally designed for good times and for bad, a reserve saving account to be drawn on. I have no plans to pull on reserve account for tax reform.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you. You know, the Republican caucus has some smart women, and I think maybe one of them could be our subcommittee coming up. I don't think y'all have any people of color, so we are missing that necessary representation. I wanted to make sure that I understand the school funding piece and that it's equitable for the district that I'm looking out for, Jefferson County Public Schools, which is our largest with 100,000 students and has the absolute most need in the state with 6,000 students who face homelessness each year. So I understand that we're freeing up money, hopefully, for the districts by raising SEEK funding, funding full-day kindergarten, and raising transportation funding. This budget only encourages local school districts to provide certified and classified staff a salary or compensation increase. There's no guaranteed raise for our educators. I heard you say it's a local issue. I wanted to call out that the budget encourages districts to do this. In the transportation piece, some money is allocated by districts, each district's cost, but then there's about $60 million that's going to be distributed evenly amongst districts. And that means mine's losing out, and I wondered why. And I wanted to ask about the critical construction needs schools piece. It's my understanding that some schools and districts get on this list through some formula or process, and some just seem to appear. So I wanted to ask about that. And then people have already joked to me about the slush fund that we're creating for legislators. I like it. But I do think that we should talk more openly about the proposal to dedicate $10 million, $50,000 to each representative for distribution in our communities and what sort of safeguards are in place.
Okay, so first one, go back to the very first one and hit it quickly. Question? First question.
Why are we taking $60 million in school transportation funding and splitting it evenly amongst districts rather than by size?
This was a way to get as many districts as possible to 100% level. So we ended up with about 32% going to 100%, 32 districts going to 100%, and then getting a baseline of 70% for all. It was the best way to accomplish that.
How do schools and districts get on the critical construction needs schools list?
You may be beyond my capabilities on that one because I'm not an expert on that list. As far as the Ludlow that was mentioned, I think the salient point is 1902, which I understand is the oldest. Sometimes you say things appear miraculously. Sometimes things languish miraculously. This may be one that languished for an untold amount of time.
You use the word needs, and I think we're going to start using it an awful lot back with you. The third piece was what some people are calling the slush fund, and we've got to come up with a catchier name, or it's going to be branded that way, the $10 million for legislators to use in their districts. Can you just talk more about that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. This is somewhat of a new concept in the General Assembly. I believe it's not a new concept in Jefferson County. I have found out after the fact, and it may be used in some other instances. And people that want to name something an ill word, you can't stop them. If it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They choose to do that, and we can't do anything about it. I prefer someone that actually analyzes the issues and finds descriptors rather than catchphrases. So on that particular pool, where the impetus starts is this. Prior A&R chairs, and everybody I've talked with in that realm of budget, and this current, with all the meetings that we had, and in general conversations when we run into each other in the hallways, hey, I've got this little local funding thing. It's on a little park that needs a roof repaired. We've got this little thing that needs to be done. We've got a little project at school. We've got this. Small funding, local funding needs. And what we found is this. We would either have to have 5,000 line items in our budget, which ain't going to happen, or find some other way that addresses those local funding, small needs. Well, we can't find a mechanism that actually covers it. You can go to local government, but they're stretched as far as they can, and they can't get to the stuff. You look at the grant pools through state government, they're big need pools for the most part. We really have a gap in coverage on those local needs, local small funding issues. You can't imagine how many legislators have come up to us, just this interim, with a $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 project for a park, a fire department, something in city government or county government or in a school system. It's unbelievable. We're trying to find some mechanism to get to those small funding local issues. So the best we could come up with is $10 million, which would be split equally between the two chambers, and then it would be split equally among the members in each chamber. So in the House, that would be $50,000. And the way that would work for public accountability is this. Let's assume that you have $50,000 through this mechanism for small local funding needs, which you should know way better than I do. And every legislator should know their own district way better than I do. You would designate that by a date certain, I think we said July the 1st, designate to the Department of Local Government. So now we have you on public record of what you've designated, and now we have you're not cutting the check out. Department of Local Government will be cutting the check out to go as you designate in public. Now, people will get creative. I ask, if we end up doing this to meet those small local needs, don't get stupid. Don't be cute. Think about what the local needs are, local funding, and understand you're going to be publicly on the hook for what you designate. And you can work with your county judges, fiscal courts, city mayors, city fiscal courts, your school systems, and you can work to help fire departments, police departments, parks, programs, all kinds of things. But if you work with the locals to do that, now you got two sets of public officials that are going to be on the record for where that money's going. And I will guarantee every one of you that whoever is in the media is going to be wanting to see what those projects are, which they should. And your constituents may want to know that, and they should. And I'm going to want to know that because I'll be asking for a pull on each one of those every year too. So it's a really good way to get to those local funding, small funding issues that we really don't have an effective mechanism to get to otherwise, but means so much to the quality of life to constituents on the ground. Now, with all things good, it can be used for ill. I'm just praying and hoping and asking that everybody use it for good. Second, next one. Thank you. Representative Hatton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Surprising no one, my questions will center around Eastern Kentucky. So I don't see funding for the KMRRA. That's the four-wheeler trails system. And Representative Fugit may already know the answer. That may be funded somewhere else. Hugely important for our economic development in Eastern Kentucky.
Let me clarify something about budget, and I should have done this on the front end. I apologize. The way the budget's put together is this. We have everything that's in the base that was funded previously or projects that were funded previously, okay? Just because they're not mentioned in what we're highlighting right now doesn't mean they've been terminated. I'm unaware of anything we terminated that was in the base or prior funding, okay? But what we've spoken to and highlighting issues in this bill are things that are either new or are being increased. So on your specific issue, I think it falls within that category of it's already there.
Okay, I didn't find it, but I know we got it the last 2 years, so maybe that means it's somewhere else. And then on the coal severance tax funds, is it the committee sub that changed it to 100% returning to counties?
House Bill 1, unamended by committee substitute, referred to all monies going back after debt service payment. Committee sub does not change that.
Okay, so it doesn't take care of the debt service the way the governor's proposal would have done.
As I understand the governor's recommendation after talking to Budget Director Hicks and Senior Advisor Atkins, correct. The debt service is being paid as set forth in House Bill 1, and the committee sub does not alter that.
So is it different than the governor's recommendation?
Correct.
It is. It is different. Okay. I would point out.
And I would point out his recommendation is different than our House Bill 1, yes.
Okay. I believe that the governor's proposal was to return 100% to counties and pay through general fund DLG fees and debt service. So if that's the case, and I need to look at the committee sub better and see if I can figure that out for myself. But it does look like that it was going to be a wonderful thing for the counties, coal counties, to if we followed the governor's proposal in that regard. And then I would want to say about the budget in general, I'm thrilled that we're funding Model Lab. I'm tickled that we've got the additional ARPA money designated for water projects, especially where I live. That's going to be a really big deal. The senior meals. I heard from folks from the Kentucky River Ad District about the additional meals that they had been able to fund, and that for the first time in a long time, they didn't have a wait list anymore. That's a really good thing. That's part of this budget, and I'm really happy to see that. I'm glad we're funding the Veterans Center in Bowling Green, and that we're still talking about putting one in Eastern Kentucky where we need one so very much. But one thing that I am sad about is that we seem to be funding education at levels that we've not seen since CARA. And I'm very happy to see that, but at the same time, we're not mandating a raise for teachers, and we're giving just about everybody else a mandated raise. It feels like we are not prioritizing teachers, and I'm worried that we're going to have winners and losers when we give that decision to local school districts who are already so pressed for their budgets covering everything they need. And I have wonderful superintendents in my district who will do their very best to give their teachers raises, but I'm worried that the way that money gets stretched, that their teachers are not going to see that. And I'm really disappointed to see that in this budget.
Thank you. And on that point, I will just point out, sometimes it is very much a local decision based on local circumstances, based on their prior histories, and sometimes Frankfort simply doesn't know best and shouldn't mandate those things. No other questions on the list. Please call the roll. We have a motion. Second, please call the roll.
Representative Beckler.
Aye.
Representative Bentley.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Blanton.
I'm a yes. Explain my vote very briefly.
Very briefly, and I'm going to just indicate to everybody, it's 1:49. We have session at 2.
Very briefly, I vote yes, move this thing forward, but I too would like to see a specific indication of raises for our teachers. Thank you.
Representative Bridges. Yes. Representative Dossett.
Yes.
Representative Fisher.
Yes.
Representative Fleming.
Aye.
Representative Flood.
Pass today.
Representative Fugate.
Yes.
Representative Gentry.
Pass.
Representative Hale.
Yes.
Representative Hart. Representative Hatton.
I'm going to vote yes because I think it's a good start and we've made a whole lot of progress, but voting yes with the hope that we still have time since early in the session to fix a lot of the inadequacies that have been pointed out.
Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Nemus.
Yes.
Representative Palumbo.
Can I explain my vote, please? I'm voting yes today, but I'm very disappointed about the teachers' raises not being included. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Prunty.
Yes.
Representative Raymond.
Not just yet, no. Because it's such a strong start and we've got so much time left.
Representative Reed.
Yes.
Representative Riley. Representative Santoro.
Yes.
Representative Tipton.
Yes.
Representative Wilner.
Briefly explain. No for today. There's so much good in here that I'm almost a yes, but I just think we have to have mental health be a clearer top priority, as well as the funding for teachers and public education. Thank you.
Chairman Petrie.
I'm going to vote yes, and just to put a little bit of context on this, understand we're in a committee meeting on House Bill 1 as amended by Committee Substitute 1. It is January the 20th, and regardless of when this committee sub, or this bill as amended by committee sub, leaves the House, it's not finished. Then it goes to over to our sisters and brothers in the Senate, and my guess is they're going to have some kind of change that they're going to want. And sometimes our sisters and brothers in the Senate will make those changes and send them back to us, and we don't agree. And there's going to be a conference. And as I spoke earlier today with Representative Raymond, who asked some good questions, almost by necessity, the budget full has to remain open until the end of session, simply because it is a full product with a lot of moving pieces, and there will be individual bills that come through that affect our numbers. So to accommodate that and any emergency that may pop up that we're unaware of, no one was aware of, in some senses it's going to be unfinished till it's finished, and that's going to be toward the end. So if you've got things you want to work on, things you want to improve on this extraordinarily good budget, if there are things you want to work on, feel free to keep lobbying. I vote yes. With 19 yes votes, 2 no votes, 2 pass votes on House Bill 1 as amended by Committee Sub 1, passes this committee with favorable expression. The same should pass on the floor. Thank you all very much. And
Chair,
Representative Prunty,
can I record a yes vote on 241?
you may,
Thank
and
you.
we will so register that. Vice Chairman Reed, anything further? Not just yet. Thank you very much. Understand, of those meetings that we talked about and all that information that's come in and we've gone over, there's not one tiddlywink of it that he has not gone over with me, and a meeting that he's not had and made sure that we're understanding it the right way. I say thank you